in this pennant race, and the Red Sox in, and of course the Arizona Diamondbacks in this weekend. But it is football season here. This guy is no stranger to Baltimore football, that's for sure. He is our WNST partner and Super Bowl 35 head coach on behalf of the Living Classrooms Foundation, as well as SeatGeek out on the internet if you need some tickets around. I might need that for my Rolling Stones tickets next month out there in Vegas. We welcome our head coach, our friend, our partner back onto the airways. It's been a little while since Coach Billick and I have gotten together and rambled. Man, we didn't even get together last week, and the Ravens are 2-0. Tell everyone from the head coaching perspective just how nice 2-0 feels as opposed to 0-2.
Well, it's just, every team, every coach, every player tells you the same thing. We're all about this week. We're all about the opponent this week. But, yeah, the difference between 2-0 and 0-2 is, just go up and walk around Buffalo a little bit and see what the difference is. Just the emotional difference, the locker room, just around the building, the step. Everybody has a little perk in their step. People are smiling a little bit more. It's easier to keep that focus because you just feel good. I realized the Cleveland game was a scare, and people, well, what does that mean? Well, it means you're 2-0. So you take a win where you can get a win, and the schedule lines up. You got a couple games here, very winnable games. Not that every game is easy, but obviously Jacksonville, Oakland, and you're looking for, even with Washington, the fact that you get a little momentum going here, and that's big in the NFL. If you can get that momentum, whether you're a great team or not, it can make a huge difference.
Did you just mention the winless Washington Redskins, Brian Billick? Was that the 0-2 Washington Redskins? We love saying that around here.
I was up there during training camp, and they were feeling very good about themselves and thought it's been interesting to watch. Kirk Cousins and this is Kirk Cousins who last half of the season last year was 74% completion, 19 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. This is a different Kirk Cousins. Just doesn't seem as confident, as fluid as we saw at the end of the season last year.
All right, I'm going to go through a bunch of these teams and just get some observations, but let's really start with the Ravens. And, when you beat the Bills and you beat the Browns, you don't impress anyone. And even if you beat them 30-0, you don't really impress anyone. That's kind of the hard part of this. But those games add up. And what I'm seeing from the Ravens is a team that's young, in transition, but more than that, the wide receiving core that we all scratched our heads and said, who, what? Dennis Pitta, really? Steve Smith, really? Brashad Perryman? That's what we were saying 3, 4, 5 weeks ago. Now that the real bullets are flying here, 2 games into this, and I know your affinity for Dennis Pitta in lots of ways, this is an incredible story we're witnessing right now.
Oh, it is. You would have thought the odds were a little prohibitive that Dennis Pitta was going to be able to come back. You know how important he is to Joe and that entire offense and the comfort zone that he provides for Joe. And you just were kind of holding your breath, weren't we? All during the summer, kind of going, is he going to hold up? Is it going to be fine? They were kind of the same way in Baltimore. And now it looks like, he's kind of over that hump, so to speak. And the receiving core, Wallace, gives you kind of that deep threat. Joe wasn't particularly efficient the other night against Cleveland, but obviously good enough down the stretch to get it done. That game started out with just kind of this unbelievable sequence of events that couldn't have played out better for Cleveland. You got to give the Ravens a great deal of credit for staying in there, not panicking, and just keep clawing back into it.
Well, when you see the one play, the 85-yard run, that's the thing that gives a DC night sweats. And we saw Dean Pease riding everybody. It happened, and you can say, well, it's one play, but it better damn well never happen again, right? That's the ugliest of ugly in your coach's room on a Monday morning, right?
Well, we were talking about this on Game Day First, the show I do for the NFL Network on Sunday mornings, about after Week 1, unbelievable, unprecedented quarterback play. In Week 1, we had collectively, all the quarterbacks in the league were better than 64% completion. We had, I'll pull the number out of my hat, and it won't be totally accurate, but close enough for government work. I think it was 49 touchdowns to 19 interceptions. That's 2.5 to 1. Unbelievable quarterback play. And people say, well, I thought defenses were ahead of offenses to start. The difference is you make a mistake on offense, you punt. You make a mistake on defense, strike up the band, bring in the PAT team. And that's what happens. You get out of position, you make a mental error, and I don't know that for a fact, but I'm guessing that 85 run had more to do with someone being out of position or misaligned that created that opportunity. And that's the frustration for you as a defensive coach.
He is head coach Brian Billick, our partner here at WNST.net on behalf of the Living Classrooms Foundation. We've got Maritime Magic coming up later in the month as well as SeatGeek out on the internet and appearing on the NFL Network on weekends and, of course, on Mondays as well, wrapping things up. All right, so for the Ravens at 2-0, you mentioned the Buffalo Bills and your pal Rex Ryan. Boy, I read on the internet on Friday that Terry Pegula and Kim Pegula, first off, I know not just the owner, but I know the owner's wife's names. They're 0-2, and they're in the locker room. What say you as a head coach about Greg Roman, who I know you also have an affinity for, being run out of there after 0? It feels to me like, rookie owners, better talk to Dan Snyder, better talk to somebody who can settle down a little bit, because this isn't the way to run a sports franchise.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Typically when something like this happens, you look at the circumstances. Okay, you lose 37-31, 34-31, and you fire your offensive coordinator. Okay, wait a minute. There's a disconnect there. Usually one of two things: the issue within amongst the coaches, or with the players and Greg Roman. I don't think it's the latter. Mike Robinson, who I do Game Day First with, is close to Tyrod Taylor and some of the guys up there. They seem to really like Greg. So evidently there was an issue with I'm guessing here, I have no idea what it is, that maybe within the staff, and if indeed ownership was, I'm not going to say behind Rex's back, because it's their team, you can do anything you want, but if they're canvassing the players, if they're doing that kind of interaction with the team separate from Rex, that's not a good thing. That's not going to bode well for Rex, and they've got Arizona and New England coming up.
All right, so for other teams that have struggled here at the beginning of the year, I can't say that the Dolphins or the Browns, but the Jaguars at 0-2, to see them this week, and I feel like I have exhausted a lot of breath on the Jaguars and the Raiders in the offseason. I feel like your network has. I feel like the NFL pundits all thought these are teams on the come. We're seeing the Jaguars this week. Convince me this isn't the same old 0-2 Jaguars team that we're going down to play this week. I know John's going to have to convince a team of that, but there were some signs of life against the Packers, but they struggled against the Vikings the other night. The Packers don't look like world beaters. This Jaguars team is scary coming in this weekend, but certainly doesn't look any better than they have in the past.
No, and I was the head of that pack that said, you know what, Jacksonville could be a surprise team. You liked what you were seeing in Blake Bortles. They had the two Allens, Hearns, and Robinson, excellent receivers. Going to get more out of Julius Thomas, their big free agent acquisition from 2 years ago. Drafted to the defensive side of the ball. They're not going to be a great defense, but a better defense. And you just haven't seen it. Now, it's tough duty. Open it against the Packers and Aaron Rodgers, and then have to go on across the country to play San Diego. I get that. But this team, again, we talk about momentum and what a difference momentum. They play the Ravens, then they got to play Indianapolis in the division, and the Bears, and then Oakland, and Tennessee. So these are a lot of winnable games here. So they can get a little bit of momentum, but if they should stumble along the way here, again, the reference frame and what is Gus Bradley. Gus Bradley's an excellent coach, but he's 12-37, something like that. Management's been incredibly patient, saying, okay, we're going to build, but now you got to win. Now it's got to show up, and so far it hasn't.
I'm just trying to figure out whether I'm going to be able to tweet from the pool with my hands wet, on Sunday going down.
You got to get one of those new phones.
Right, waterproof. There you go. I'm sure they make it. They make everything on the internet. That division, you mentioned them playing the Colts, and of my affinity for Chuck Pagano. This thing doesn't look good for them. And more than that, the Houston Texans and the disciples of Bill Belichick down there and having Osweiler, and they're going to see that scene on Thursday night as well. This Houston Texans start, I think, has gotten people excited there about this, because it looks to me like the Colts are a diminished team this year and might be nobody coming to catch them at this point.
Yeah, Houston, a little bit of pressure on Bill O'Brien, same way. Okay, it's time for us to continue. I mean, obviously you've been in the playoffs. You got to get the quarterback thing settled. So they went out and spent a bunch of money on Brock Osweiler, where this reigning Super Bowl champ Denver Broncos said, no, we don't think he's worth that. So you went out on a limb a little bit. So Bill O'Brien had to be right. And so far it looks right. They're playing great defense. And Brock Osweiler looks like he's going to be the real deal for them. Yeah, it's going to be a test going into New England, all but with Brissett, the young rookie quarterback, maybe starting for them. But it is in New England, and this is going to be a challenge for them. That division, I said going in that You talk about coaches on the hot seat. I hate having those conversations, but you have to have them as the season starts. And we just talked about Gus Bradley, Chuck Pagano. Again, Indianapolis. It doesn't feel real good right now. And going to be issues there. Mike Mularkey in Tennessee, obviously they got a nice win. That's all about the growth of Marcus Mariota. But the expectations with Houston, I think ownership there has made it very clear. Look, we expect to progress along here beyond just making the playoffs. But you're right. I don't know that there's anybody in the division who's going to make a run at these guys.
I guess, Lo, these many years later, you sort of make fun of it in your speeches about not having a quarterback and all of that. Sitting where Houston was, if you were in that chair, and you've been in that chair, and the Osweiler thing happens, would you have gone all in on Osweiler in that way? Because what you've essentially just said to me is, well, John Elway said, X, and they said Y, and, they think they're smarter than John Elway was because John Elway had the kid sitting there and decided over a couple of $1 million, go take a walk. I mean, go to Houston and play. I'll go figure something else out at this point. And you look up, and Denver's doing okay too.
Yeah, and when you got that Super Bowl ring in your back pocket, that certainly helps.
Right.
In terms of making those types of decisions versus Houston that's saying, look, we got to get this quarterback thing figured out. And obviously they did their analysis. They felt like he was going to be worth it. And they went and got him. And, we're 2 games into it. We got a long way to go, but so far it looks pretty good. And if indeed they can figure it out, Houston becomes a legitimate, bona fide Super Bowl contending team because they're going to play great defense. And that interior four, that front four at Houston now, whew, boy, you talk about the real deal, particularly if it's healthy. So, yeah, this is a team, if indeed Osweiler can continue to be that guy, they're going to be the real deal.
I'm starting to get worried about the Steelers, Coach, and I know you spent a lot of nights worrying about the Steelers as well back in your day. They look better than the average Steelers team so far, and certainly hold and serve against the Bengals, but more than that, that offense is going to create matchup issues for everyone, and they don't even have their full complement.
I picked the Steelers to win the Super Bowl.
Oh, you did not.
That was tough.
No, you didn't. Come on.
Yeah, it's tough. But
I thought we were
friends. You what, the strength for them right now, and obviously to think they're doing this, D'Angelo Williams has been great, solid, and they even got Le'Veon Bell back in. Antonio Brown is just unbelievable. But Ben Roethlisberger and what he's doing is, a couple of throws. How about the one where he gets the gun snap, bobbles it on the ground, picks it up, and throws a 40-yard bomb?
Only he does that.
Unbelievable. But I think the strength for them is that offensive line. And it's a big if they stay healthy, and if that offensive line stays healthy and intact, and it hasn't been the last 2 years, and obviously Ben as well. They get Le'Veon Bell back, and if they stay healthy, wow, this Steeler team looks this is going to be an all-day sucker now when you play them. This is going to be something.
What if you coach Colin Kaepernick at this point? I don't mean on the field. We haven't talked about it. I know you probably talked about it on the network. I haven't heard your comments, quite frankly,